Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Well, spring is here. It's time for a new scam. No, new scams are popping up all the time, but George just passed along one to me, and this is the second time I've seen it. So someone sent me this last week, and then George sent it to me yesterday. And I sent George back a note and I said, George, is it okay if I do a video about this? Because I'd like to read an example on the air. He said, knock yourself out. So this is an email that George got a couple days ago. And I'm going to read you the email first, and then I'll go through the problems with it as I like to do. But it's an email that he got that says it is from the U.S. Court of Appeals to the 8th Circuit. Subject: electronically created indictment notification to the defendant. And that's all bolds. That is some serious stuff, my friends. Bold letters in a subject line. And it's addressed to him via email. And the body of the text reads as follows: indictment notice to the defendant. And then he has a 03CV-2020- with a number after it, which looks like a case number to me. I'm an attorney, I would know. It says submitted on April 9th, 2020. You are currently being sued in court, period. You now have 11 days right after reading this message to submit a response with the court, as well as serve a copy to the plaintiff or consider other appropriate actions. 38 days if you are notified outside of the state. Second bullet point: in the event that you will not reply or take additional steps within the time period permitted, legal actions may be entered versus you for the legal remedy claimed in the case. Period. Then, there are a bunch of little asterisks. Very important message to the accused. Asterisks. We are notifying you of the court hearing time and date of this complaint by information enclosed to this notification. If the defendant is not going to show up in a courtroom, a predetermined legal actions may be entered versus the defendant for the remedy desired by the plaintiff. You must study and print the file attached and follow the information presented in it. This is an automatically generated indictment notice. Do not reply to the current email address. Where do I begin? Imagine you're shooting fish in a barrel with some kind of shooting device. And the barrel's really, really small. There's no water and there's nothing but fish. This is easier than that. First of all, it's from the U.S. Court of Appeals to the 8th Circuit. Lawsuits do not originate in the courts of appeal. So if you were being sued, a summons would be issued by the trial court. If in the federal system, it would be a federal district court. In a state court, it would be whatever you have in your state. In Michigan, it could be a district court, a state district court, or it could be a state circuit court, depending on the amount of money being involved and the claims being made. Okay? So right off the bat, in the first line from U.S. Court of Appeals, you know this is not real because the Court of Appeals would not be issuing a summons. Second of all, the return address is support@bubbleseller.site. I don't think U.S. government sites use Bubbleseller as a domain name. Now, I've got some people in the audience, JP, I'm looking at you. I've got some people in the audience who are experts on the internet. Let me know if you think there's a chance that the federal government is using Bubbleseller as a domain name. Second, the second line has a mistake in it. Electronically created indictment notification to the defendant. If you're being sued, it's not an indictment, it would be a summons. An indictment is for a criminal offense. You'd be indicted. And trust me, they don't serve indictments by email. Okay? A federal marshal would show up and get you, or a police officer would come and get you, or something of that nature. But a electronically created indictment notification in a civil action makes no sense. The date, March 16th, I guess there's nothing wrong there. That date is a real date. And then again, it says indictment notice to the defendant. As noted, you're not indicted if you're being sued. Go down a couple lines. It goes, you are currently being sued in court. Now, what's interesting is a lot of summonses do say you are being sued. But they don't say in court. That's redundant. Where else can you get sued? In church? So a summons in Michigan will say right on it, you are being sued. And then it'll say you have 21 days to file an answer, 28 if served by mail. And then it'll say if you do not answer this complaint in a proper manner, you may be defaulted. We highly recommend you hire an attorney. So the idea is you are currently being sued in court is kind of what an actual summons would say. But there's a bunch of other problems here, not the least of which is that there are no court systems I know of where you can initiate a lawsuit, that is, launch a lawsuit, and serve a summons by email. Summons is generally the most typical way you hear being served is someone walks up and hands it to you and says, you're being served. You don't have to say it. They just, boom, you're served. They give it to you, okay? The idea that you can initiate a lawsuit by sending an email, how would anybody know if anybody got it? Oh, I emailed it to them. Oh, okay. It then says you have 11 days right after reading this to submit a response. First of all, 11 days? Generally speaking, everything I've heard of, you get at least 3 weeks, which is 21 days. And next of all is the awkward phrasing, you have 11 days right after reading this, as opposed to just 11 days after reading this. And it wouldn't be reading this, it would be receiving this. Because if I hand you a summons and you don't read it, you can't say, I didn't read it for 3 weeks, so therefore I only responded after reading it. No, after you receive it is what matters. So it goes, you have 11 days right after reading this message. Well, isn't this a summons or is it a message? To submit a response with the court as well as serve a copy to the plaintiff or consider other appropriate action. Considering other action won't help you any. It's taking other action that will help you. 38 days if you were notified outside of your state. Jumping from 11 to 38? or is that a hat tip to the band 38 Special? Who knows? In the event that you will not reply or take additional steps, you will not reply or you do not reply. Again, the awkward English of the non-American speaker. In the event that you do not reply, steps will be taken against you if you ignore a summons. But here's in the event that you will not reply. Legal actions, plural, which again we would not say, legal action, may be entered, no, be taken. You take legal action, you don't enter legal action. Versus you. Versus, by the way, is Latin for against. That's one of the interpretations I've often heard of, the translation of versus as against, but we would not use it in a sentence like that. Legal actions may be entered versus you for the legal remedy, singular, claimed in the case, and it would be remedies, plural, and it wouldn't be claimed, it would be alleged, but again, very important message to the accused. You're not accused in a lawsuit, okay? Very important message to the defendant would be it, because once you've been sued, you are a defendant. It would just say important message to the defendant. In fact, many summonses say right on them, notice to defendant, because that's what you are. Once you've been sued, before you've been served, once you've been sued, you are a defendant. That's how it is. If the defendant is not going to show up in courtroom, or missing the article in front of courtroom, but also if the defendant is not going to show up. Well, it's not if you're not going to, it's whether you do or not. It should say if the defendant does not show up in the courtroom. A predetermined legal actions, plural. So there you finally have an article. A, predetermined legal actions, plural. Maybe, I remember in 7th grade, English, Mrs. Wakefield. And I remember talking about these things, articles and agreement and so on. And I remember, I might have been one of them, but I remember students complaining, going, why do we need to know this stuff? Because most of us spoke fairly well, and most people speaking do get that correctly. They'll say things like, this is a car. They won't say this is a cars, okay? And they'll say, this is, my house. They don't say this is my houses. Most people get that stuff correctly when they speak. But in English class, you had to sit there and go through it to such an extent that you thought, why will this ever help me in life? And Mrs. Wakefield should have looked at me and said, Steve, about 40 years from now, you're going to be shooting videos and posting them on a thing called YouTube to be seen by people on the internet. And we'd all look at her and go, what are you talking about? But she would have been right. So a predetermined legal actions may be entered versus the defendant for the remedies desired by the plaintiff. Now, again, it's not what the plaintiff desires. It's what the plaintiff has pled. So the remedy pled by the plaintiff or requested by the plaintiff, but desired by... Plaintiff, what do you desire? $1 million in a ham sandwich. And that ham better be juicy and the bread better not be stale. That's what I desire. You must study and print the file attached and follow the information presented in it. Again, I've had several people say, Steve, you understand this bad English. It's from people in other languages typing up what they say and asking Google to translate it. And that could be because to say you must study and print the file, first of all, most people would say you must print the file and study it. Do I really study the name of the file with the doc extension going, cool, it says legal.doc. Huh. Should I study it some more? I'm not sure I can glean much more from it. You must study and print the file attached and follow the information presented in it. Again, very awkward. In real life, somebody would say, you should print the file attached and read it and follow the instructions there. Period. I know people are going to say, Steve, you shouldn't help these people. Trust me, these people ain't watching me. For one thing, they don't speak English. I have no doubt these people don't speak English. They cannot learn anything from me. I speak English. I should actually have one of my entire shows transcribe one of my videos into English, feed that through Google into like Swahili, take the Swahili, run it into Finnish, then take the Finnish back into English. You know something? I got a lot of time on my hands these days. I don't want to do that. Look, we're all on lockdown right now, so I'm going to take some digressions here. I apologize. There's a Finnish singer named Lauri Taka, and I'm mispronouncing his name. It's Tahka, and there's umlauts over the two A's, so it's Lauri Taka. And again, I should be rolling the R and the L and hitting those A's just right, and I apologize to my Finnish audience members, all three of you. And I like this singer. He's a really good singer. And he just put out an album that's amazing. It's all in Finnish. I don't understand a word of it, but it's good music. And so I was poking around on the internet trying to find information about him, but he's one of these guys who only sings in his native language, and because of that, does not get any airplay in America. No one over here knows who he is, except for the listeners of my audience who look this stuff up. And so I found an interview and a concert review of a concert he did in Finland last summer. And the Finnish review was in Finnish in a Finnish newspaper. And I thought, I wonder what this is. I wonder how good it was. So I blocked a chunk of it and dropped it into Google Translate in Finnish and said, convert this to English. I mean, it was just the craziest weird sentences, and but it was just simply because the Finnish language does not translate easily. Let's put it that way. So at the very bottom of this notice, it says, this is an automatically generated indictment notice. Do not reply to the current email address, because, again, the current email address is supported bubbleseller.site. Again, indictment notice. It's not an indictment if you're being sued. It's a summons. So if you get one of these, you can immediately assume it's a scam. I do know that some attorneys do now send things back and forth via email pursuant to consent with the other party. So in other words, if I'm talking to an attorney, he goes, I got a document I'm going to file with the court. Want me to send it to you? I'm not expecting him to mail it to me. I'll just say, yeah, sure, send it to me via email, But that's different because we know each other. I know it's coming, and that's not the same kind of service that's required to initiate a lawsuit. To initiate a lawsuit, the standard for the summons is much higher, and the standard for the service is much higher. So I will tell you that there was a document attached to this. And when I opened the email to read it from George, and immediately my anti-malware software started going off, saying there is malware on this email. Do not touch anything. Step away from your computer. Plug your ears. So I did not click on the attached link, but of course that's where this is headed. That's where they want you. They want you to click on the link, and the link is either going to put a Trojan on your computer, or it's going to be some kind of thing that says, yes, to download a copy of your email, there's a service fee of $19.95, which you can enter here, and they'll have a thing that looks like a cord of some sort, and once you enter your information, they'll just empty whatever it is that you just sent them. So that's the scam. But as of right now, I'm unaware of any court on earth that allows you to initiate a lawsuit by indictment sent via email. So, George, thanks for the email. I appreciate it. If you get crazy stuff in the email, please keep it coming. In these trying times, the recent events in the news, we need to have things to lift our spirits like this. So there you go. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. You gotta love flat earthers. They make the world go round.